Now, let's turn away from sport. Let's head to the Middle East and bring you right up to date there, because Israeli warplanes have continued to bomb the Gaza Strip and parts of Lebanon a day after US envoys returned to the region to push for ceasefires. Hezbollah has continued to fire rockets into northern Israel. In Gaza, the Hamas-run health ministry says some 55 people have been killed since yesterday, many in airstrikes in the centre of the Gaza Strip. So let's go live to Jerusalem and live to Ben Brown, who is minutes to the latest update from Lebanon, saying at least 10 people have been killed in Israeli strikes in the east of the country.
Yeah, that's right, Matthew. We had the Lebanese Prime Minister yesterday saying there might even be a ceasefire in the coming days or even hours, but it doesn't look like that. We've had Hezbollah rockets coming over into northern Israel and more Israeli airstrikes, as you say, in Lebanon. In terms of what's happening in Gaza, we're hearing from United Nations agencies that they are now going to resume their polio vaccination campaign. Now, this was because polio was detected for the first time in August. For the first time in a quarter of a century, a baby was partially paralysed by polio. So they started vaccinating children. There was a pause in the fighting to allow that. They couldn't then carry out the final phase of that vaccination campaign because of the intensity of the fighting, but they are now going to be able to resume that in the next 24 hours. Meanwhile, as you say, in the last 24 hours in Gaza, 55 people have been killed. That's according to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza, and among those killed were about 13 people, we gather, in Nuseirat refugee camp when the entrance to a school was hit, a school that was housing displaced people. Now, the medical facilities in Gaza, we know that they are very, very fragile indeed, and I've been talking to Professor Nick Maynard, who's a British National Health Service surgeon who's been going to Gaza, working in Gaza for the last 15 years. He was there earlier on this year, and he told me how bad hospital and health services in Gaza now are.
The infrastructure for healthcare has been completely destroyed in Gaza. It's a broken healthcare system. There's not been enough aid getting in. The doctors, nurses and other healthcare workers can not really even support all the trauma surgery they're having to do, let alone all the other health conditions in Gaza. So the healthcare system has been destroyed by the Israelis.
The Israeli military have said that hospitals have been used by Hamas as bases, as command centres. What do you say to that argument?
Well, I can only speak of my own experience and that of close friends and colleagues, and none of us have seen any evidence of that at all. I've been working in Gazan hospitals for nearly 15 years, particularly Shifa Hospital, which of course has been repeatedly claimed to be the central command centre of Hamas, and in all the years I've been visiting Shifa, I've seen no evidence of that at all. And perhaps most importantly, I've always had completely unrestricted access to every part of every hospital I've worked in. In the 4 weeks I've spent in Gaza since October the 7th last year, I have seen no evidence of any Hamas militants in the hospital. And of course, the other important factor to point out is that the vast majority of the victims I have seen, the victims of the indiscriminate bombing, have been women and children.
That's Professor Nick Maynard, British surgeon who's been out in Gaza very frequently, giving me his verdict on the dire state of hospital and health services there in the territory at the moment. Just a quick word, Matthew, on the diplomatic front. There had been 2 US officials who were here in Israel yesterday, Amos Hochstein and Brett McGurk, sent by the United States to talk about possible ceasefires both in Gaza and in Lebanon. It was thought that we might be seeing some progress on that idea of a ceasefire in Lebanon at least, but and Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, said that progress had been made in those talks here in Israel with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But having said all that, the consensus seems to be there won't be any sort of imminent breakthrough on a ceasefire either for Gaza or Lebanon, especially before the US presidential result next week.
Ben Brown, live there in Jerusalem. Thanks very much. Thank you.